The sky over Seoul turned black at exactly 3 in the afternoon. Minji Kang stood on the roof of the military headquarters, watching as massive ships appeared from nowhere. They were bigger than mountains, blocking out the sun. Within seconds, every radar system on Earth screamed warnings. 300 alien warships had just arrived. Minji was 42 years old and had commanded Earth's defense forces for 6 years. She had trained for wars against other nations, terrorists, and rogue states. She had never trained for this. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her radio, but her voice stayed calm. "All units, this is General Kang. We have contact. I repeat, we have contact with unknown vessels." The aliens didn't wait. They didn't negotiate. They simply sent a message in perfect English, Chinese, Arabic, and 50 other languages. "Humans of Earth, you are now property of the Velkari Empire. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 1 hour." Emperor Thulmon watched Earth from his command ship. To him, humans looked weak and stupid. They had barely reached their own moon. They fought each other over invisible lines on maps. They were perfect slaves for the dilithium mines on the edge of the empire. He had conquered 46 other worlds. Earth would be 47. Minji called an emergency meeting with world leaders. The President of the United States wanted to negotiate. The Premier of China suggested buying time. The Prime Minister of India asked about their chances in a fight. Minji looked at all of them through the video screen. "Our chances are 0, she said quietly. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Maybe thousands of years ahead. Then we surrender?" someone asked. Minji's eyes went cold. "No, we fight." The hour passed. Earth's answer was silence. Thulmon smiled and gave the order. 3 Velkari ships moved into position over major cities. Sydney went first. A beam of pure energy struck the city center and spread outward in a wave of destruction. 4 million people died in 30 seconds. Mumbai was next, then Sao Paulo. The aliens were making examples. Minji watched the reports come in. 7 million dead in the first hour. Her jaw tightened. She had hoped the aliens would land ground forces first, giving Earth time to organize. Instead, they were simply killing from orbit. "Launch everything," she ordered. "Every missile, every railgun, everything we have." Earth's weapons rose from silos and ships around the world. Thousands of missiles streaked toward the alien vessels. The Velkari didn't even seem worried. Energy shields glowed around their ships and every missile exploded harmlessly against them. Not one alien ship was scratched. "They're landing now," her second-in-command reported. "Ground forces in Seoul, New York, and Beijing." Minji grabbed her rifle. "Then we meet them on the ground." The Velkari soldiers were 7 feet tall, covered in gray armor that seemed alive. They carried weapons that shot bolts of energy. When they hit a human, there was nothing left but ash. They marched through Seoul's streets like they owned them, because now they did. Captain Doyen Park led the defense of Seoul. He was 30 years old, one of the best fighter pilots on Earth, but his jets were useless against the shields. Now he fought on the ground with regular soldiers. They fired everything they had at the aliens. Bullets bounced off armor. Rockets were shot down by automated defenses. The Velkari didn't even hurry. They just walked forward, killing anyone who stood in their way. Then something strange happened. A young soldier threw a knife at a Velkari warrior, not in desperation, but because he was out of ammunition. The knife passed through the energy shield like it wasn't there and stuck in the alien's neck. The Velkari fell, green blood pouring onto the street. Doyen saw it happen. His mind raced. The shield stopped fast-moving objects but let slow ones through. "Cease fire!" he shouted. "Everyone cease fire!" His soldiers looked at him like he was crazy. Use blades. Use anything that moves slow. They switched tactics. Bayonets, knives, even sharpened sticks. Close combat. The Velkari had never experienced this. Every other species they conquered fought with energy weapons or projectiles. Nobody charged them with swords. The aliens fell back, confused and bleeding. Minji received Doyen's report within the hour. A weakness. Finally a weakness. She immediately broadcast the information to every military force on Earth. Get into close combat. Their shields don't stop blades or slow projectiles. Make them afraid of getting close. The next 3 days were hell. The Velkari adapted, using area weapons that killed everything in wide zones. They bombarded cities from orbit when ground forces got into trouble. Earth lost battles in New York and Beijing. Billions died or were captured. But in every fight, humans made the aliens bleed. And that was something. By the end of the first week, the Velkari controlled most major cities. They herded humans into camps and began sorting them for slave labor. Families were separated. Children cried for parents they would never see again. The strong were sent to ships heading off-world. The weak were simply shot. Minji refused to surrender. She moved from bunker to bunker, always one step ahead of alien search teams. Her command staff dwindled from 50 officers to 12, but she kept broadcasting messages to resistance fighters forming in the mountains, forests, and ruins of cities. "We are humanity. We don't kneel. Make them bleed for every meter." Commander Yuna Shin led a resistance cell in the ruins of Seoul. She had been a police officer before the invasion, and she knew every tunnel and sewer in the city. Now she used that knowledge to strike at alien patrols. Her group killed 3 Valkyrie soldiers in the first week, 10 in the second. They took the aliens' weapons and learned to use them. Emperor Thulmon read the casualty reports with growing anger. He had lost 800 soldiers. That was more than all his other conquests combined. These humans were supposed to be primitive, weak, and easy to control. Instead, they fought like demons. They hid in their cities like rats and struck from shadows. They refused to break. "Send more troops," he ordered. "Double the garrison, triple it. I want this planet pacified." His admiral hesitated. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should negotiate with their leaders." "They have no leaders," Thulman said coldly. "Kill anyone who resists. The rest will learn to obey." But Minji had no intention of teaching humanity to obey. From her hidden bunker deep below the Himalayan mountains, she recorded a message and broadcast it on every frequency she could reach. Her face was dirty, her uniform torn, but her eyes burned with determination. "People of Earth, they came to enslave us. They destroyed our cities. They murdered our families. But we are still here. We are still fighting. And we will never stop. You wanted a war, aliens? Now you'll learn what that truly means. We are humanity, and we will teach you to fear us." 6 months had passed since the Valkyrie invaded Earth. Minji Kang stood in a cave in the Rocky Mountains, looking at a map covered in red marks. Each mark was a labor camp where humans were held as slaves. 50 million people had been shipped off-world. Another 200 million were in camps on Earth, waiting their turn. The planet's population had been 8 billion. Now it was 6 billion and falling every day. But the resistance was growing. Every continent had fighting groups. They attacked alien supply convoys, sabotaged power stations, and freed prisoners when they could. The Valkyrie controlled the cities, but they didn't control the wilderness. And they were learning that controlling angry humans was like trying to hold water in your hands. Lieutenant Hyunwoo Song was 24 years old and had been an engineering student before the invasion. Now he sat in a captured Valkyrie shuttle, taking it apart piece by piece. Dr. Hana Choi worked beside him. She was the smartest scientist left alive on Earth, and she was determined to understand alien technology. "Their power source is incredible," Hana said, holding up a small crystal that glowed with blue light. "This single piece generates more energy than our largest nuclear plant. And it's stable, completely safe." Hyunwoo nodded, examining the shuttle's control panel. "But their computer systems are strange. Everything runs on AI. There's no manual override, no backup controls. If you disable the AI, the whole ship stops working." "That's a weakness," Hana said quietly. "They're too dependent on their machines." Minji received their report with great interest. The Valkyrie had better technology, but they had weaknesses too. They relied on shields that couldn't stop slow objects. They used AI for everything, and they had never faced an enemy that refused to quit. Commander Yuna Shin's group in Seoul had grown from 12 people to over 200. They lived in the subway tunnels and sewers, coming out only to attack. In 6 months, they had killed 43 Valkyrie soldiers and destroyed 6 supply trucks. The aliens had put a price on Yuna's head, but nobody turned her in. Humans protected their fighters. The Valkyrie had learned to fear the darkness. Their technology could see through walls and detect heat signatures, but it couldn't stop a knife in the back. Their armor was strong against energy weapons, but could be pierced by sharpened metal. And their soldiers, for all their training, had never learned to fight an enemy that hid and disappeared. Captain Doyen Park led an attack on a Valkyrie convoy moving through what used to be Colorado. His team had 30 fighters armed with captured alien weapons and homemade explosives. They waited in the rocks above a narrow valley, perfectly still. Doyen had learned patience. The Valkyrie convoy appeared right on schedule. 3 transport trucks protected by 2 combat vehicles. "Wait," Doyen whispered into his radio. The convoy entered the valley. "Wait." The trucks reached the center. Now explosives buried in the road detonated. The lead combat vehicle flipped over, its shields flickering out. Doyen's fighters opened fire with Velkari weapons they had taken from dead soldiers. The aliens tried to return fire, but they were in a kill zone. Within 3 minutes, it was over. 14 Velkari dead, 3 trucks captured, and all their supplies taken. But Doyen knew the real victory wasn't the supplies. It was the fear. Every time humans won a fight, the aliens became more nervous. They started traveling in larger groups. They avoided certain areas. They looked over their shoulders. Fear was spreading through the Velkari army, and that was worth more than any weapon. Velkari Commander Rathzul read the report about the Colorado ambush with frustration. He was responsible for North America, and his casualties were becoming embarrassing. The Emperor had sent him here to pacify a primitive world. Instead, he was fighting a war of shadows against an enemy that wouldn't stand still and wouldn't surrender. Rathzul was an experienced soldier. He had fought in 12 campaigns across the Empire. He recognized skill when he saw it, and these humans had skill. They understood terrain. They understood timing. They were learning to use captured weapons better than some Velkari soldiers. If they had been born in the Empire, they would have made excellent warriors. But they weren't part of the Empire. They were slaves who refused to accept their place, and that made them dangerous. In her hidden command center, Minji coordinated attacks across the planet. She had established communication with resistance cells on every continent. They couldn't win direct battles against the Velkari, but they didn't need to. They just needed to make occupation impossible. "We're receiving a transmission," her communications officer said. "It's from off-world." Minji's heart jumped. "Off-world?" "Put it through." A face appeared on the screen. Human, but thin and scarred. The man looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "General Kang, my name is Daewon Im. I'm transmitting from a slave ship orbiting Proxima Centauri. We've taken control of the cargo hold. There are 5,000 of us here, and we're ready to fight." Minji stared at the screen. Humans had seized a ship. "In space? How?" Daewon smiled grimly. "Same way we fight on Earth. We waited for the right moment, then we hit them hard and fast. The Velkari don't expect slaves to fight back. That's their mistake. Can you control the ship? Not yet. But we have an engineer here who thinks he can figure it out. We just need time." Minji made a decision. "Hold that position. We're going to find a way to get you home." Over the next month, more reports came in from off-world. Humans were rebelling on slave ships, on mining colonies, on Velkari military bases. The Empire had spread Earth's people across dozens of star systems, thinking distance would break their spirit. Instead, the humans were spreading resistance everywhere they went. Dr. Hana Choi finally cracked the Velkari faster than light drive. It took her 4 months of constant work, but she understood it now. The technology used something called hyperspace to fold distances. A ship could travel light years in hours. "We can build this," she told Minji. "We have all the pieces from captured equipment. Give me 3 months and I'll give you a working FTL engine." Minji looked at the prototype engine sitting on the workbench. It was made from parts of 6 different Velkari ships, held together with human engineering and determination. It was ugly and probably dangerous, but if it worked, Earth could reach the stars. "Do it," Minji said. "Build it as fast as you can." Lieutenant Hyunwoo Song worked with Hana's team day and night. They took a damaged Velkari cargo ship they had captured and began installing the FTL engine. The ship wasn't pretty. Half of it was human-made repairs using steel and wire, but it would fly. 8 months after the invasion, Earth achieved something the Velkari never expected. A human ship jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared from the solar system. It traveled to Proxima Centauri, picked up the 5,000 humans from Daewon Im's rescued slave ship, and returned home. When those 5,000 people stepped back onto Earth's soil, the whole resistance celebrated. It was proof that humans could learn alien technology. It was proof they could travel the stars. And it was proof that the Velkari weren't invincible. Emperor Thulmon read the intelligence report 3 times, unable to believe it. They built a FTL ship. In 8 months? His advisors said nothing. What could they say? It had taken the Velkari 500 years to develop FTL technology. The humans had stolen it, reverse-engineered it, and built their own version in 8 months. These primitives were learning faster than anyone thought possible. "Send reinforcements to Earth," Thulmon ordered. "I want that planet crushed." But his admiral looked worried. "Your Majesty, we're stretched thin. We control 47 worlds and we need garrisons on all of them. If we send more ships to Earth, we weaken our position elsewhere. Thulmon slammed his hand on the table. Then weaken it. These humans must be stopped before their rebellion spreads. In her mountain bunker, Minji received new intelligence from a spy inside a Velkari communication station. The aliens were panicking. Their empire was vast but fragile. They controlled through fear and superior technology. Now humans were learning their technology and refusing to be afraid. The Emperor was sending more troops to Earth, which meant he was pulling them from somewhere else. Minji smiled for the first time in months. The Velkari had made their biggest mistake. They had taught humans that they could be beaten. Now humanity would teach the galaxy what freedom meant. The battle for Earth ended on a cold morning in December, 1 year after the invasion began. The last Velkari garrison in Tokyo surrendered after a 3-day siege. Commander Yuna Shin personally accepted their weapons. She looked at the defeated aliens and felt no joy, only exhaustion. Earth was free, but at a terrible cost. 3 billion humans were dead. Cities were ruins, but they had won. Minji stood in what used to be the United Nations building in New York. Most of it was destroyed, but one conference room still had walls and a roof. World leaders gathered there, appearing on screens from bunkers in temporary capitals around the globe. They looked tired and scared. They wanted to rebuild. They wanted peace. Minji had other plans. We have 50 captured Velkari ships. We have 10 ships we built ourselves. We understand their technology now, and we have something more important than ships. She paused, looking at each face on the screens. We have 5 million people who were taken as slaves and scattered across the Velkari Empire. Our children. Our families. I'm bringing them home, and I'm going to free every other slave in that empire while I'm at it. The president of what remained of the United States shook his head. General, we've lost half our population. We can't afford another war. This isn't another war, Minji said coldly. This is the same war. The Velkari came to Earth and tried to break us. We broke them instead. Now we finish it. Some leaders argued. Some agreed. In the end, they voted to give Minji command of Earth's new space fleet. 60 ships against an empire of thousands. It seemed impossible. But then, everything about the last year had seemed impossible. Captain Minho Bay commanded the first ship, a retrofitted Velkari cruiser now named Defiance. He was 35 years old, had been a Navy officer before the invasion, and had learned to fly alien ships by trial and error. Mostly error. He had crashed twice during training, but now he could make a Velkari ship dance through space like it was built for humans. The fleet's first target was a mining colony on a planet called Kepler 442b. Intelligence said 3,000 human slaves worked there, guarded by 200 Velkari soldiers and 3 warships. The colony produced rare metals the Empire needed for their technology. Taking it would hurt them and save human lives. Minho's fleet jumped into the system and immediately went to attack speed. The Velkari ships scrambled to respond, but they weren't ready. They had never been attacked at one of their colonies. Who would dare? Humans would dare. The space battle lasted 15 minutes. Minho used tactics he learned from old Earth naval battles. His ships scattered, forcing the Velkari to split their fire. They attacked from multiple angles, confusing the alien AI targeting systems. And when the Velkari shields adapted to energy weapons, Minho launched missiles, old-fashioned chemical rockets that moved slow enough to pass through the shields. 2 Velkari ships were destroyed. The third tried to run and was disabled. Minho's fleet moved to orbit around the colony. This is Captain Bay of the Earth Liberation Fleet. All Velkari soldiers on the surface surrender now. You have 10 minutes. The Velkari commander on the ground called for reinforcements. They wouldn't arrive for 3 days. He looked at his 200 soldiers and the 3,000 slaves. If the slaves rebelled while under attack from space, his position was hopeless. He surrendered. When the human slaves saw Earth ships landing, many of them cried. They had been taken from their homes, sent across the galaxy, worked until they could barely stand. Some had been gone for a year. Some had given up hope of ever seeing Earth again. Now their own people had come for them. But Minji's fleet didn't just free humans. On Kepler 442b, there were also 2,000 slaves from another species. They called themselves the Torvan. They looked like insects with 6 legs and hard shells. But they were intelligent, and they had suffered under the Velkari for 300 years. The Torvan elder approached Minji when she landed with the second wave.
"You freed us," the elder said through a translation device.
"Why? We are not your people." Minji looked at the alien. Its shell was scarred from years of hard labor. Its legs shook with exhaustion. "The Velkari came to my world to make us slaves. We said no. Now we say no for everyone. You're free. What you do with that freedom is up to you." The Torvan elder was quiet for a long moment. Then it clicked its mandibles in what might have been a laugh. "We choose to fight beside you. Show us how to hurt the empire that hurt us." Over the next 3 months, Minji's fleet struck 8 more colonies. Each time they freed slaves and captured ships. And each time they found other species who had been enslaved by the Velkari. The Quilax, who were brilliant engineers. The Methrin, who could communicate telepathically. The Vornis, who were incredibly strong. Species after species joined the growing fleet. The coalition wasn't organized at first. Different species didn't trust each other. Some wanted revenge. Some just wanted to go home. But Minji held them together with a simple message. We don't want an empire. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want everyone to be free to choose their own path. Fight with us, and when we win, you go home. No strings attached. Specialist Gionko was a cryptographer who had cracked Velkari communication codes. She listened to their military channels constantly, learning their plans before they knew humans were listening. One day she intercepted something important. The Velkari were moving their main fleet to reinforce their industrial core worlds. They were leaving their outer territories weakly defended. Minji saw the opportunity immediately. "We hit the industrial worlds. If we take their factories, they can't build new ships. If they can't build new ships, they can't defend their empire." Admiral Jiwan Lee commanded the Earth Space Navy. She was cautious by nature, which had kept her alive through the invasion. "General, we have 800 ships now, but most of them are captured Velkari vessels with mixed crews. The Empire has thousands of ships. Even with their fleet split up, we could face 2,000 warships at their core worlds. Then we make sure those 2,000 ships never want to fight us," Minji said. She turned to Jion. "Can you broadcast on their military channels?" Jion nodded. "Yes, but they'll trace it. I want them to trace it. I want every Velkari ship to hear what I have to say." The message went out across the Empire on every military frequency. Minji's face appeared on screens in Velkari ships, stations, and command centers. She spoke in their language, which Dr. Hana Choi's team had finally decoded. "Velkari Empire. This is General Minji Kang of Earth. 1 year ago you came to my world and tried to enslave my people. We fought back, we won. Now we have freed 15 star systems from your control. We have liberated 7 different species. And we're not stopping. Every world you control, every person you've enslaved, we're coming for them all. But I'm offering you a choice. Surrender peacefully. Free your slaves. Join the coalition as equals. Or fight us and watch your empire burn. You have 1 week to decide." Emperor Thulamon watched the message and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Not for himself, but for the empire he had inherited from his father. The humans had done the impossible. They had united different species against a common enemy. They had turned the empire's own technology against it. And worst of all, they had given slaves everywhere a reason to hope. Hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Velkari core worlds prepared for war. 2,000 warships gathered around the industrial planet of Draconis Prime. Admiral Krenvox commanded the defense. He was the Empire's best military mind, and he was confident he could crush the human fleet. They had numbers on their side. They had better training. They had defended these worlds for 1,000 years, but he had never fought an enemy that had absolutely nothing to lose and everything to fight. For Minji's coalition fleet arrived at Draconis Prime with 800 ships. They were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. The odds were terrible. But Minji had one more trick to play. Just before the battle began, Gionko hacked into the Velkari military network and broadcast footage to every enemy ship. Video of freed slaves, images of species living peacefully together, recordings of former Velkari colonies that had joined the coalition and were now thriving without the Empire. On 400 Velkari ships, crews watched the broadcasts and realized they had been lied to. The Empire told them that other species needed to be controlled, that the Emperor was protecting civilization. But the video showed freed worlds that were peaceful and happy. They showed humans treating former enemies as friends. They showed that maybe, just maybe, the Empire was wrong. 400 ships lowered their weapons and refused to fight. Admiral Krenvox screamed orders. but half his fleet had just mutinied. The battle turned into chaos. The remaining Valkyrie ships tried to fight, but they were now outnumbered by the coalition. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. When it was over, Draconis Prime belonged to the coalition. The industrial heart of the Empire had fallen. And the message was clear to every Valkyrie world. The humans were coming and they couldn't be stopped. 18 months had passed since the Valkyrie invaded Earth. Now their empire was dying. Minji stood on the bridge of her flagship looking at a map of the galaxy. Red markers showed Valkyrie-controlled systems. Blue markers showed systems freed by the coalition. There were more blue markers than red now. 47 systems had become 15, and those 15 were scared. Ambassador Seonmi Han worked day and night to hold the coalition together. Before the invasion, she had been a diplomat for South Korea. Now she represented 7 different species who had just learned they could be free. It wasn't easy. The Torvin wanted revenge against every Valkyrie they could find. The Quilax just wanted to go home and rebuild. The Methrin worried about what would happen after the war ended. Each species had different needs, different fears, different dreams. Seonmi held meetings in a converted Valkyrie station that now served as coalition headquarters. She listened to everyone's concerns. She negotiated compromises. She reminded them why they were fighting. "We're not building a new empire," she said again and again. "We're making sure no empire can ever do this again. When this is over, you all go home, free, independent. But we need to finish the job first." General Taeyang Yu commanded the ground forces. He was 48 years old, had fought in every major battle since the invasion, and had learned to coordinate attacks between humans, Torvin, Quilax, and 4 other species. Each species fought differently. The Torvin were fearless and fast. The Quilax were careful and precise. The Hexari could survive in environments that would kill others. Taeyang learned to use each species' strengths. His forces landed on Draconis Prime to secure the factories. The Valkyrie civilians were terrified. They expected the coalition to massacre them, the way the Empire had massacred others. Instead, Taeyang's soldiers protected them. They set up medical stations. They distributed food. They treated the Valkyrie civilians better than the Empire had treated them. A young Valkyrie woman approached Taeyang. She was thin and scared, holding a small child. "Why are you helping us? We invaded your world. We killed your people." Taeyang looked at her and the child. "Your soldiers did that. Your emperor did that. You didn't. And even if you did, killing you won't bring back the people I lost. All it would do is make me like the people who hurt me. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in making sure this never happens again." The woman started crying. She had lived her whole life in the Empire, believing the emperor was protecting them from dangerous aliens. Now aliens were protecting her from her own government. Everything she knew was wrong. Word spread across the Valkyrie homeworlds. The coalition wasn't killing civilians. They were treating prisoners well. They were offering food and medicine to anyone who needed it. And they were offering every Valkyrie system a choice. Join the coalition as equals or keep fighting alone. One by one, systems started surrendering. Not because they were beaten, but because they realized the coalition was offering something the Empire never had: freedom. But Emperor Thulmon would not surrender. He pulled back to the capital world of Valkyrie Prime with his personal fleet of 300 ships. His most loyal troops and officers stayed with him. They believed in the Empire. They believed other species needed to be controlled. And they believed humans were dangerous animals who had to be put down. Admiral Krenvox had survived the battle at Draconis Prime. He had lost most of his fleet, but he still believed he could win. He met with the Emperor in the palace. "Your Majesty, we need to negotiate. The humans are offering reasonable terms. We can end this war." Thulmon looked at him with disgust. "Negotiate? With slaves? Never. We are the Valkyrie Empire. We have ruled this sector of space for 1,000 years. These primitives got lucky, nothing more. We will crush them, and then we will make an example of Earth that will be remembered for 10,000 years." Krenvox said nothing more. But that night he sent a secret message to the coalition. He gave them the defensive positions around Valkyrie Prime. He gave them the Emperor's military plans. He gave them everything they needed to win. Because Krenvox had been a soldier for 40 years, and he knew a lost war when he saw one. Better to lose with dignity than watch his entire species destroyed for one man's pride. The coalition fleet arrived at Valkyrie Prime with 1,000 ships. Every freed species contributed vessels. Humans, Torvin, Quilax, Methrin, Vornis, Dalkin, Prin, and even some Valkyrie who had defected. They faced Emperor Thulmon's 300 ships and the planetary defense systems. Minji broadcast one final message before the battle. Emperor Thulmon, this is your last chance. Surrender now. Free your people. Step down peacefully. We will allow you to live. We will allow your people to join the coalition. But if you force us to fight, we will win, and we will make sure everyone in this galaxy knows that empires fall when they face people who refuse to be slaves. Thulmon's answer was to fire every weapon he had. The battle for Valkyrie Prime lasted 6 hours. It was the biggest space battle in galactic history. Thousands of ships fighting among the orbital stations around a planet. Energy beams crossed space like deadly lightning. Missiles streaked through the darkness. Ships exploded in silent fury. Captain Minho Bay led a squadron of 30 ships against the Emperor's personal guard. They were the best Valkyrie pilots in the Empire, flying the most advanced ships. But Minho had learned something during the war. Technology didn't win battles. People did, and his people wanted freedom more than the Emperor's guards wanted victory. His squadron took heavy losses. 12 ships destroyed in the first 10 minutes. But they kept fighting, kept pushing forward. They used tactics no Valkyrie would try, dangerous maneuvers that risked their own ships to destroy the enemy. Because humans had learned during their invasion that sometimes you had to risk everything to win. Minho's ship took a direct hit that knocked out half his systems. His ship was dying, but he aimed it at the Emperor's flagship and pushed his engines to maximum. At the last second, he and his crew jumped into an escape pod. His ship crashed into the flagship's shields and the shields failed. 50 other coalition ships immediately targeted the flagship. It exploded in a massive fireball. Emperor Thulmon survived. His escape pod made it to the surface of Valkyrie Prime. But his fleet was breaking. Half his ships were destroyed. The rest were surrounded, and on the planet below, something unexpected was happening. The civilian population was rebelling. For months, coalition broadcasts had been reaching Valkyrie Prime. The government tried to block them, but some always got through. Valkyrie citizens saw freed worlds thriving. They saw former slaves living in peace. They saw humans treating Valkyrie prisoners with kindness. And they started asking questions. Why were they fighting? Why did the Empire need to control everyone? Why couldn't they just live in peace? When the battle started in orbit, riots broke out in the capital city. Valkyrie civilians stormed government buildings demanding an end to the war. The police tried to stop them, but the people were done obeying. By the time Thulmon's escape pod landed, his own citizens were waiting for him. General Taiyang Yu landed with ground forces to find the Emperor already under arrest by his own people. Valkyrie citizens had captured him and were holding him in chains. A group of elders approached Taiyang. "We surrender," one of them said. "We're done fighting. We want peace." Taiyang accepted the surrender. Coalition troops moved through the city, but they didn't need to fight. The war was over. The Valkyrie Empire had fallen. Not because humans destroyed it, but because the people within it chose freedom over tyranny. Minji landed on Valkyrie Prime the next day. She walked through the capital city with Ambassador Seonmi Han at her side. Valkyrie citizens lined the streets. Some looked angry. Some looked ashamed. Most just looked tired. They had lost their empire, but they had gained something more important. The chance to choose their own future. A young Valkyrie man stepped forward. He couldn't have been more than 20 years old. "Why did you do this? Why did you free us?" "We invaded your world." Minji stopped and looked at him. "Your emperor invaded my world. You were just living your life. And now you get to keep living it, but without someone telling you what to think or who to hate. That's what we fought for. Not revenge. Freedom." Seonmi organized a meeting with representatives from all 47 former Valkyrie systems. They met in the old imperial palace where emperors had once commanded armies to conquer and enslave. Now it hosted the first meeting of the Coalition of Free Worlds. Every species had a vote. Every voice was heard. And for the first time in galactic history, different species came together as equals. The question of what to do with Emperor Thulmon was debated for 3 days. Some wanted him executed for his crimes. Some wanted him imprisoned forever. The Torvin wanted him handed over to the families of slaves he had killed. But in the end, the coalition voted differently. They exiled him to a small moon with a simple house and enough supplies to live. He would spend the rest of his life alone, knowing his empire was gone and his people were free without him. Minji voted for exile too, though part of her wanted harsher punishment. But she had learned something during the war. Revenge doesn't free you. It just chains you to the past. Better to let him live with what he had done and build something better for everyone else. The coalition of free worlds was born. 47 systems, 7 species freed from slavery, hundreds of Velkari worlds that chose peace over empire. And Earth, the planet that had started it all, was just one voice among many equals. That was how Minji wanted it. 3 years had passed since the Velkari invaded Earth. The galaxy looked different now. Where there had been an empire of fear, there was now a coalition of free worlds. Where species had been divided into masters and slaves, they now met as equals. And where Earth had once been a single planet barely reaching its own moon, humans now traveled among the stars. The trial took place in a great hall on Velkari Prime. Representatives from every freed species came to witness justice. Emperor Thulmon sat in chains, flanked by guards from 3 different worlds. He looked smaller than before, older and tired. The weight of his crimes had finally broken through his pride. Minji sat in the front row, watching. She had stepped down as military commander after the war ended. Now she was just a witness like everyone else. But her presence meant something to the people in that hall. She was the general who had said no to slavery and made it stick. The charges were read: 3 billion humans killed, 50 million taken as slaves, 7 other species enslaved for centuries, hundreds of worlds conquered, thousands of civilizations destroyed. The list went on for an hour. Thulmon said nothing. What could he say? The evidence was overwhelming. Representatives from each species spoke. A Torvan elder described 300 years of slavery. A Quilax engineer talked about watching his family die in the mines. A human woman named Yoonji Kim told how she watched the Velkari burn her city and take her children. One by one, they told their stories. And Thulmon heard what his empire had really done. When it came time for sentencing, the debate was fierce. Many wanted death. The Torvan especially called for execution. But Ambassador Seonmi-han argued for exile instead. If we kill him, we're no better than he was. If we imprison him forever, we waste resources on revenge. But if we exile him to live alone with his thoughts, he faces something worse than death. He faces the truth of what he did every day for the rest of his life. The vote was close, but exile won. Thulmon was sent to a small moon at the edge of known space. He would have a simple house, enough food and water, and nothing else. No servants, no subjects, no empire, just his memories and his guilt. On the day he left, Thulmon looked at Minji one last time. You destroyed everything I built? Minji met his eyes without flinching. No, I freed everyone you hurt. There's a difference. With the trial over, the real work began. Rebuilding, healing, creating something new from the ashes of the empire. It was harder than fighting the war had been. In war, you knew who the enemy was. In peace, everything was complicated. The Velkari people struggled the most. They had lived under the empire for generations. Many had never known anything else. Now they had to learn to live without someone telling them what to do, what to think, what to believe. Some adapted quickly. Others felt lost and afraid. And some small groups wanted the empire back, believing the old ways were better. Dr. Hana Choi led the technology sharing program. Every species in the coalition contributed their knowledge. The Velkari had advanced weapons and shields. The Quilax had incredible engineering. The Methrin understood biology and medicine in ways other species never imagined. Humans brought their stubborn creativity and ability to adapt. Together, they made breakthroughs none of them could have achieved alone. Hana's team developed medical technology that could heal injuries that once meant death. They created clean energy sources that ended pollution on dozens of worlds. They built ships that could travel farther and faster than anything before, and they shared all of it freely, with no one species controlling the knowledge. General Taiyang Yu helped establish the Coalition Defense Force. It wasn't an army meant to conquer. It was a force meant to protect. Every species contributed ships and soldiers. They trained together, learned from each other, and became something the galaxy had never seen. A military force that existed only to defend freedom, not to create empires. The hardest task fell to Ambassador Seonmi-han. She had to create a government that could work for everyone. 7 different species with different needs, different cultures, different ways of thinking. How do you make laws that work for telepathic Methrin an insect like Torvin and humans all at the same time? The answer was democracy, but not like Earth had known it. The Coalition Council had representatives from every world, and decisions required agreement from at least 2/3 of them. No single species could control the others. No majority could oppress a minority. Every voice mattered. It was slow and sometimes frustrating, but it worked. Captain Doyen Park led the new exploration fleet. The Coalition didn't just want to protect what they had. They wanted to explore, to meet new species, to learn about the galaxy. But they approached exploration differently than the Empire had. When they met new civilizations, they came in peace. They offered friendship, not conquest. They shared technology and asked for nothing in return except the chance to learn and grow together. The exploration fleet discovered 12 new species in the first 2 years. Some were primitive, just beginning to use tools. Some were advanced, with technology the Coalition had never seen. But all of them were approached with respect. The days of one species dominating others were over, at least in this part of the galaxy. Commander Yuna Shin returned to Seoul to help rebuild her city. 3 years after the invasion, most of the damage was repaired. Buildings stood where there had been ruins. Parks grew where there had been craters. Children played in streets that had once run with blood, but the memory remained. Earth would never forget what happened, never forget the cost of freedom. Yuna opened a museum in the heart of Seoul. It displayed artifacts from the war, Valkyrie weapons captured in battle, pieces of the first ship humans built from alien technology, photos of people who died fighting for freedom, and a list of names. Every human killed during the invasion and the war that followed. 3 billion names. It took up an entire wall, floor to ceiling, room after room. Visitors could touch the wall and hear stories about the people whose names they touched. On the anniversary of the invasion's end, Yuna gave a speech at the museum. "We remember," she said, "not to hold grudges, not to hate, but to remind ourselves why we fought. We fought because we refused to accept that some people deserve to be free and others deserve to be slaves. We fought because we believed everyone deserves a chance to choose their own path. And we won because we were willing to die for that belief. Never forget that. Never forget them." Lieutenant Hyunwoo Song became head of the Coalition Engineering Corps. His team worked on projects all across the freed worlds. They built schools on Torvin colony worlds. They established power systems on Quilax industrial planets. They created water purification systems for Valkyrie agricultural worlds. Everywhere they went, they improved lives. One day, a group of young Valkyrie engineers came to study with Hyunwoo. They were the generation born after the Empire fell. They had never known conquest or slavery. They just knew they wanted to build things that helped people. Hyunwoo taught them everything he knew. And he learned from them too, because the new generation had ideas the old ones never imagined. Specialist Ji Yun-ko became head of Coalition Communications. Her job was to keep all the worlds connected, to make sure information flowed freely. The Empire had controlled what people could know. The Coalition believed everyone should have access to truth. So Ji-yeon's network carried news, entertainment, education, and ideas across hundreds of star systems. Anyone could access it. Anyone could contribute to it. It was messy and sometimes chaotic, but it was free. 2 years after the war ended, Minji was asked to become the first chancellor of the Coalition Council. She hesitated. She was tired. She had fought for 3 years straight. She wanted to rest, to go home to Earth, to live a quiet life. But Seonmi convinced her. "You're the one person everyone trusts. Humans trust you because you saved Earth. The freed species trust you because you liberated them. Even the Valkyrie respect you because you treated them fairly. We need you." So Minji accepted. She stood before the Coalition Council and gave her first speech as chancellor. "I'm a soldier, not a politician. I don't know much about governing. But I know this. We built something here that the galaxy has never seen before. Different species living together as equals. No empires, no slaves. No one telling anyone else how to live. It's fragile. It's imperfect. It will always need work, but it's worth fighting for. And if anyone threatens it from outside or inside, I'll fight again. Because freedom is not something you win once and then forget about. It's something you protect every single day." The council chambers erupted in applause. Representatives from 7 different species, making sounds that ranged from clicks to whistles to cheers. They didn't all agree on everything. They argued constantly about laws and policies and the best way to do things. But they all agreed on one thing. They were free and they would stay free. On Earth, a monument was built in what used to be the United Nations Plaza. It showed a human woman standing with representatives from the 6 other freed species. At the base was an inscription in every language of the coalition. They came to enslave. We chose to free. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not dominance. Not conquest. Hope. Minji stood in front of that monument on the 5th anniversary of the invasion. She was 47 now, with more gray hair and more scars. But she was alive. Earth was alive. And billions of people across the galaxy were free, because humans had said no to slavery and meant it. A young girl approached her, maybe 8 years old, holding her mother's hand. "Are you really General Kang? The one who fought the aliens?" Minji smiled. "I am. But I'm not a general anymore. Just Minji." The girl looked up at her with wide eyes. "My teacher says you saved the galaxy." Minji knelt down to the girl's level. "No, I helped. But millions of people saved the galaxy. Soldiers who fought, engineers who built, scientists who learned, regular people who refused to give up, and people from 6 other species who chose to fight with us instead of against us. We all saved the galaxy together. That's the important part. Not one person, everyone." The girl thought about that. "Can I help save the galaxy when I grow up?" "You already are," Minji said. "Every time you're kind to someone different from you, every time you stand up for someone who needs help, every time you choose to be free instead of scared, that's how we keep the galaxy saved." The girl smiled and ran off with her mother. Minji watched her go, then looked up at the monument. At the 7 species standing together. At the words promising hope instead of dominance. 20 years from now, that little girl would be grown. Maybe she would join the exploration fleet. Maybe she would be an engineer or a teacher or a parent. But she would grow up in a galaxy where different species lived as friends, not masters and slaves. That was worth 3 years of war. That was worth 3 billion lives lost, not because the deaths were acceptable, but because those who died had fought for something real. Something lasting. Something that would echo across the stars for generations. The galaxy was free, and as long as people like that little girl remembered why, it would stay free. Minji walked away from the monument toward her apartment. She had dinner plans with Doyen, Yuna, Hana, and the others. They got together once a month to remember the friends they had lost and celebrate the peace they had won. Tomorrow she would return to the council and deal with whatever new crisis needed solving. There was always something. That was the price of freedom. It required constant work, but tonight she would have dinner with friends. She would laugh and tell stories. She would live the life so many others had died to protect. And she would remember that the greatest victory wasn't defeating the Velkari Empire. It was building something better in its place. A galaxy where freedom was not just a dream but a promise kept.